Welcome, everyone, on behalf of South Asians for Biden and Indians for Biden National Council. Recognized by the Biden-Harris campaign, both are national grassroots organizations dedicated to engaging, educating, and mobilizing the South Asian and Indian American community to elect Joe Biden and Kamala Harris this November. As a growing force in American politics, the Indian American community is a pivotal voting bloc, and our community's ability to organize and turn out voters to the polls will be crucial for securing a victory for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris this November. Thank you to Indians for Biden National Director Sanjeev Joshipura and Deputy Director Mansi Patel for leading the efforts to turn out the community. We have a great event for you all tonight with distinguished panelists. I'd like to take a minute to introduce our moderator for this evening, Ms. Neha Devan. Neha Devan is South Asians for Biden National Director and is a lawyer at a national law firm. Previously, Neha served as a Deputy Director and General Counsel at New York City Mayor's Office of Appointments. In this capacity, she oversaw the appointments of various city commissioners and other public officials, and was also responsible for official appointments to the city's numerous boards and commissions. Neha has long been active in both local and national politics. Most recently, Neha co-founded South Asians for America, a national grassroots organization dedicated to helping elect South Asian candidates and advocating and lobbying on behalf of the South Asian community at the local and state levels. She has also been active in her local community board and political clubs. Neha served as the president of the South Asian Bar Association of New York in 2012 and now sits on the organization's board of directors. Welcome, Neha, and thank you for serving as our moderator this evening.
Thank you so much, Praveen, and thank you everybody joining us this evening at home. I promise this is going to be a fascinating conversation with all of our panelists. So please allow me to introduce them to you. We'll start with Manpreet Singh Anand. He currently serves as the Regional Director for Asia Pacific Programs at the National Democratic Institute. He was the former Deputy Assistant Secretary at the State Department's Bureau of South and Central Asian Affairs. We're also joined by Nisha Biswal, who's the President of the U.S.-India Business Council, and she was the former Assistant Secretary of State for the South and Central Asian Affairs at the State Department. We're also joined by Mushtaq Ganja, who is the current Chief of Staff and Vice President at the American Council on Education. He was the former Chief of Staff at the Office of the Undersecretary at the U.S. Education Department. And finally, we're also joined by Suhas Subramaniam. He's currently a delegate at the Virginia House of Delegates, and he's a former White House policy advisor White House policy advisor and special assistant for technology policy. So thank you all very much for joining us this evening. And all of us are wondering, with respect to the panel on being Obama alumni. So if you could tell us just a little bit about your time during the Obama administration, whether you were a political appointee, what your role was, and just a little bit about your day-to-day. So why don't we start with Manpreet?
Sure, thanks Neha, and thank you for organizing this event. It's a real privilege to be here amongst all of these colleagues. In terms of your question, so I was a political appointee in the Obama administration. And as you mentioned, my titles, Deputy Assistant Administrator for USAID and Deputy Assistant Secretary of State. These were fancy titles that basically meant I was part of a leadership team that helped to shepherd the foreign assistance and key bilateral relationships in Asia, and in particularly South Asia. During my time in the Obama-Biden administration. I think what's important to remember of that time is that there was a real focus on the Indo-Pacific region as a strategic foreign policy priority. And so we were a part of a leadership team that did a number of things. We sought to bring the US-India bilateral relationship to new heights. We provided rapid response efforts to natural disasters that happened in the region, like the Nepal earthquake in 2013. And we took advantage of opportunities as they emerged in surge support, diplomatic and otherwise, when there were opportunities to build relationships with various countries in the region, such as Sri Lanka when there was a historic election in 2015. And so what I take away from my day-to-day work when I was in the Obama administration is frankly that I worked with some of the best professionals and most patriotic public servants I had ever met. I think, and I hope actually, that I made as much an impact with my presence and my time there as I could, because they have just so richly devoted their careers to doing service for the American people. And you always wanted to rely on those professionals so that you can make the right decisions. And so that's what I remember about my day to day. Part of the fun, actually, in being part of the Obama-Biden administration was that there wasn't a typical day. And so there was always something coming at you that you learn from and you sought to contribute towards. And it truly was a privilege of a lifetime to serve in the Obama-Biden administration.
That's so comforting to hear, and I think you're being humble when you say it was just fancy titles, because there's certainly a lot of work that goes into that. And you're speaking about sort of U.S.-India ties, and I know that you definitely had an impact with the work that you did. So thank you so much for that. Turn it over to Nisha, your role and your thoughts.
Well, thank you so much, Neha. And it's really wonderful to be part of this conversation today. I had the great pleasure of working with Manpreet at USAID and with Dr. Raj Shah, who was the administrator of USAID, and just one of the many Indian Americans that served in the Obama-Biden administration. In the second term, I had this wonderful conversation with Dennis McDonough and Jake Sullivan and presidential personnel. And they said, one of the things that we really want to do is elevate the relationship with India. And, we would like for you to take on the leadership of the South and Central Asia Bureau at the State Department and see how we can really advance US-India ties and take them to another level. I was, of course, very humbled and frankly, a little bit intimidated to have such a expectation put on my shoulders, but also just really proud that the Obama administration, that the president, the vice president, the secretary of state put that confidence in me to shepherd this relationship. And so from 2013 through 2017, I was the Assistant Secretary of State for South and Central Asia. I had the privilege of working with so many fantastic people throughout both career and political appointees, and also just a unique circumstance of having Manpreet there working in the South Asia Bureau, having Puneet Talwar, the Assistant Secretary for Political Military Affairs at the Department of State, Arun Kumar, who was the Assistant Secretary of the Department of Commerce, working on international trade and global commerce issues. And so just a really strong showing of Indian Americans in foreign policy. Rich Verma, of course, had previously served as the Assistant Secretary for Legislative Affairs, and then went on to be the first Indian American to serve as US Ambassador to India. So really phenomenal team that worked on foreign policy alongside a really phenomenal team that worked on domestic policy as well, with many, many Indian Americans on that side as well. It was a privilege for me and an honor that I think is the singular honor of my lifetime, of being able to work in a way that allowed me to advance US foreign policy, US national interest, but also deepen the partnership between the United States and India.
Yeah, and that you and Manpreet certainly did very well. And it's interesting, both of you mentioned colleagues. So I know that you're referring to each other in terms of the fantastic collegiate relationships that you had, but also, as you highlighted, both of you highlighted, the US-India relationship was one that was very strong during the Obama-Biden administration, because this is something that they valued as being very critical, to US national interests as well, and just sort of on the world stage in terms of allyship. So, thank you both very much for the work that you did with regard to that. And we'll turn it over to Mushtaq for your experiences during the administration.
Yeah, thank you, Neha, and thanks for having me. Likewise, honored to be with this set of panelists and excited to answer any questions that the audience might have. I spent basically the entire 8 years of the Obama administration in the administration, first as a career person, and then as a political. I spent the first 5.5 years in the U.S. Attorney's Office in Baltimore, where I was a prosecutor who was sort of tackling violent crime mostly in a city that has a lot of promise, a lot of love, but some violent crime, unfortunately. From there, I detailed over to the White House counsel's office. So I was in the White House for most of 2013, working on nominations, working on vetting issues. And then from there, I moved over to the Department of Education. So while I was at Justice and while I was in the White House, I was teaching on the side. I still teach, and so I had sort of a serious interest in higher education policy, and moved over to the Department of Education, where I was chief of staff to the person who's sort of running higher ed for the Obama administration. So was able to see sort of the full range of issues that were related to higher ed, and was able to work on the sort of the main priorities of the Obama administration: access, affordability, completion, getting our students to college, through college, and then helping them sort of be able to afford college and be able to pay for it afterwards. So, like Nisha, like Manpreet, it was an honor to be able to work with just the most talented set of political and career appointees. I mean, everybody rowing in the same direction, folks really having a North Star of a common purpose, and then, trying to get as much done as we possibly could in a few years. So, really, really excited to get to work with them and excited to be here today. Thanks, Neha.
Thank you, Mushtaq. And that's so great that you were able to sort of cover the full 8 years and do, a variety of different things. So that's certainly an opportunity, to get a little bit of everything. So thank you for that. And Suhas, your experience.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Sneha, and thank you so much for the organizers for putting this together. I'm very excited to be on this panel, very esteemed colleagues. So my name is Delegate Suhas Ramani. I represent Northern Virginia and the Virginia House of Delegates. That's like our state house. So I worked in the Obama administration from the last 2.5 to 3 years. Before that, I worked in the House of Representatives, and I worked in the U.S. Senate as well. And I had the pleasure of working with Vice President Biden throughout those experiences. And one thing I've seen is that, a lot of people are saying, should we be excited about voting for Biden, not just against Trump? I can tell you that you should be very excited to be voting for Vice President Biden, because if you are a fan of Obama, you should be a big fan of Vice President Biden. A lot of their strengths are the same. They're both very open-minded. They're both very in tune with the facts. They listen to smart people. They surround themselves with good people. Those are things that this president has not done. And so I can tell you that from my experience, I was a technology policy advisor. I ran a task force on technology policy. And we kind of helped the president on a lot of issues like AI, on the future of work, on expanding broadband access in the US and across the world. And whenever we needed Vice President Biden, he was so good about articulating our ideas that were sometimes pretty complicated to the American people in a very, very digestible way, in a way that inspired. And I think he's going to do that if he's our president. And so we have to come out. If you haven't done so already, please come out and vote. The early voting is the way to do it this year. And Vice President Biden is going to be a great president. And so I can tell you from my experience that we'd be very proud to have him in the Oval Office.
Thank you, Suhas. That's so comforting to hear. I feel like you've done our job for us here at South Asians for Biden in terms of making the pitch. But that's really, firsthand experience in terms of, look, it's not necessarily about the excitement. Here you have, first of all, you should be excited about him because there are many things to be excited about. But you have somebody here who pays attention, who surrounds himself with capable people. And that's exactly what we want in a leader. So thank you so much for that. And turning to the other question, do you all feel as though the Obama-Biden administration was representative of the Indian and South Asian communities? And what do you think we could expect from a Biden-Harris administration in terms of representation? So why don't we start with you again, Manpreet?
Yeah, no, it's a great question because I think we sometimes take this issue for granted, the value of diversity. And it was clear in the Obama administration that there was a value placed on diversity. And I would say for the right reasons. It's not just about having an administration that physically looks like the rest of America, which is important and appropriate in and of itself, I should say. But I think there was an emphasis, and I think a Biden-Harris administration would also put an emphasis on this, on why a diverse representation within government is important for public policy. And I think this sometimes gets lost in the mix. It's not just about getting faces like this, but it's also about getting diverse perspectives, that you have an administration that has really committed to the American project in a way, that recognizes the true value of America is actually bringing all of these diverse voices and perspectives together so that we can have the best possible public policy decision-making that we can. Because you are accounting for people with different backgrounds, you're recognizing that different communities have different sets of issues and contexts and cultures to address. And so this was definitely apparent during the Obama administration. You heard from Nisha kind of rattling off, probably at the top of her head, the number of different folks that we worked with that were just from South Asian heritage. But it was true across the entire, I would say, political appointment class. And I think that sends a message. It sends a really important message that government is a place for everybody and for all these diverse voices to come together so that we can do right by all of the American people. So I fully expect that to continue in a Biden-Harris administration.
That's amazing. And, as you're mentioning, it's not necessarily just checking off a box, but it's really the perspective, and it's representative of this country. So that's the rich value in that. So over to you, Nisha, for your thoughts.
Well, first of all, I agree with everything that Manpreet said. I think Vice President Biden has quoted, I think, in a number of public events that while the Obama administration had the record for the largest number of Indian Americans and South Asians serving in the Obama administration, that he had every intention of actually surpassing that record. So I think that that's something we can all be proud of, excited about, and look forward to. But I think a critically important point to recognize here is, I was the first Indian American or South Asian to serve as the head of the South and Central Asian Affairs Bureau at the State Department. And Rich Verma was the first Indian American to serve as U.S. ambassador to India. And what that recognizes and signifies is the belief and understanding that a person who comes from a particular ethnicity and has roots in a particular geography can well and strongly advance the U.S. interest in that geography, to place that level of trust and confidence and say, yeah, we do believe that U.S. foreign policy is enhanced and advanced when it resembles the composition of America. I think that's a really big breakthrough achievement of the Obama administration, and is something that Joe Biden firmly believes in and acknowledges as well. And you have today, the vice presidential nominee for this party is someone with immigrant roots. Someone who also, comes with ties to South Asia. And that, again, is just an incredibly important achievement for the South Asian American community, for the Indian American community, but also an incredibly important acknowledgement in America of how Americans come from all different backgrounds, from all over the world. They make this place their home, and they take America forward in many ways in how they come into public service.
No, and that's such a critical point, right? In terms of those firsts, but how it was actually valued for the administration to actually have, an Indian American who's serving as the ambassador to India, and Nisha, in your capacity as well. But also to your point that it's critical where, the Biden-Harris administration not only values diversity, but also, the South Asian community in terms of, picking somebody such as you mentioned, with immigrant roots that happen to also be South Asian. So definitely really great points. Mushtaq, your thoughts on this issue?
I think Nisha and Manpreet have put it exactly right. And I don't have much to add, except that when I was in the White House counsel's office, we worked very, very closely with the Presidential Personnel Office. And so I was, with the administration when they were evaluating candidates for positions. And, they were very, very committed to the incredible diversity of thought that representing the incredible diversity of thought that exists in the administration. They were very committed to having a White House and an administration that looks like America. And over and over, I saw instances of making sure that the full slate of possible candidates was put forward, so the decision makers had multiple people to look at for positions. I thought that was exactly right. And because, a full slate was put in front of decision makers, I think it was often the case that Indians and Indian Americans were able to serve in positions that, they might not have been able to if, there were the sort of same old network, that had been used in previous administrations. So I was very proud to serve, very proud to work on issues of personnel.
That's actually so encouraging to hear that it wasn't just about, oh, well, this is my network. It's like, no, here is an actual slate that is, representative of, America. And also here's the talent and the experience that they bring forth. And that's what you want from your leadership and expect that. So very comforting to hear that that was what happened during the Obama-Biden administration, and certainly what we can expect from a Biden-Harris administration moving forward. So thank you for that, Mushtaq. And last but not least, over to you, Sahas.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think I'll echo what everyone else said on, Indian Americans being a part of the administration and, being hired up and down. I mean, Vice President Biden had several on his staff in the White House and throughout the years, even in the Senate. I'll say that, as far as who's actually going to be better for the Indian American community as a whole and who's going to represent Indian Americans on issues, I hear a lot from Indian Americans and my neck of the woods that are supporting Trump, and they say it's because Trump is more India friendly, and Trump is cares about Indian Americans more, and he's more fiscally conservative, so he's going to protect our interests a little bit more. Someone even just asked a question about that. I'll just I think sometimes I think we understand now that this president, this administration likes to bend the truth a little bit, and so the message coming out from there is that we are fiscally responsible, which is not true. They've run up a huge deficit. For what? For tax breaks for the rich, for the richest Americans, not upper middle class or middle class Indian Americans, but the richest billionaires and corporations. And, they haven't come to bat for Indian Americans on the issues that we care about, like education. As a state legislator, I'll say that, we have to spend a lot of money on education, and, we can't take from highway funds because the federal government hasn't funded highways in a really long time. So we have to spend money on roads that the federal government should be paying. That's less money for education. That's less money for healthcare. That's less money for all the issues that Indian Americans care about on a day-to-day basis. We are not getting funded on a very basic level because of the Republican Party right now as it's currently constructed. And so to say, don't ever let a Republican tell you that they're fiscally responsible, because they're really not. We've had nothing but income inequality increase, and that's not coming into the pockets of everyday Indian Americans at any level, whether it's upper middle class or whether it's, those who are still trying to make it. So, I'll say that I think when it comes to the actual issues that affect you as Indian Americans, you really need to come out and vote for Vice President Biden.
That's actually a really, really good point, because that's something that we hear on a regular basis too. And there's certainly a lot of misinformation. But as you're saying, I mean, if you have to take money out of one pot and you don't have enough for the other, how is that actually helpful to us if our children are going to school and we just don't have enough money to fund them? And so the amount of misinformation that's out there is glaring. But this is why we're having an event like this tonight for folks who've been a part of an administration to highlight, look, this is what can be done. This is not fake. This can happen, and what we can actually expect from a Biden-Harris administration moving forward. But Suhas, really, really great points about that, because we've been struggling with that as well. But I think you made a really good case for why that's not the case with some of the misinformation with the Biden-Harris ticket. Stisha, moving on to you, and I know a lot of people want to hear about this, is where do you think the US-India ties fit into a Biden-Harris administration? And how will that actually be different from the Trump administration?
That's a great question, Neha. Let me just say, for so many of us in the Indian American community, we have spent so many years really striving to advance and elevate the relationship between the country of our birth and the country of our citizenship, of our residence, and where we have made our homes, our families, and our future. And a large amount of credit goes to the Indian American community for really, bringing the US-India relationship to where it stands today. What I think the Biden-Harris administration fully embraces, understands, and will put into motion after January 20th is that India today is a global power. It is a key actor on the global stage. And there's virtually no challenge that we're facing in the world today where engaging India and leveraging the capabilities and the commitments of India is not of utmost importance. And so I think that a Biden administration, which is so committed to strengthening our global alliances, investing in global institutions, and really reinvigorating a rules-based international order. A Biden administration will see India as being a central part of all of those goals and objectives, and a partnership that is at the very top in terms of priorities for the United States. Barack Obama said, I think it was about 7 years ago, said that the US-India relationship was the defining partnership of the 21st century. And I think Joe Biden and Kamala Harris will certainly put India as amongst the very, very top of priorities as they look to strengthen America's standing in the world.
That's actually really encouraging to hear, Nisha, and especially as somebody in that space who has worked during the Obama-Biden administration. But yes, I mean, India is a critical country, and taking the torch from the Obama-Biden administration then and moving it forward with the Biden-Harris administration to only strengthen that relationship, and also the global institutions, as you talked about, is paramount. So yes, there will be a even stronger relationship with US-India moving forward. So that's very encouraging to hear. So let me turn it to you, Manpreet. in terms of the experience that you've had at the State Department, and also, you served as the Deputy Assistant Administrator at USAID, and currently at the NDI. What sort of emphasis do you think would be placed on your work in a Biden-Harris administration? And what do you foresee would be the role of the United States on the world stage and in shaping democracy more broadly?
Well, thanks, Neha. I think that that is such an important question today. What is the value of democracy, and what role is the United States going to play going forward on democracy? And so while I'm not a part of the Biden-Harris campaign, what I would say is that I think there are a few things that that administration would have to focus on in terms of foreign policy. And first and foremost, it would be to restore American leadership for democratic values. I think we will have to see a foreign policy that is centered on democracy itself. When I was in the Obama-Biden administration, I always felt that our foreign policy was best when it adhered to both our national interest as well as American values. And those values always centered around democracy, the values of transparency, accountability, inclusion. And we've seen such a vast difference between that approach and what we've seen in the Trump administration, right? An administration that has sought to run roughshod over institutions, trample on democratic norms, call the press the enemy of the people, even undermine our own confidence in the democratic process, talking about spreading misinformation about voter fraud and other things. So I think as we are seeing a rise of authoritarian tendencies around the world, the US actually needs to step up again to be that beacon for democracy so that all voices can be heard. And so I think first and foremost, it will be about restoring American leadership for democratic values. Now, what does that actually mean in practice? Well, I think part of it, and we've each, I think, touched upon it in different ways, is revitalizing strategic relationships. And that means with treaty allies as well as strategic partners. Nisha just made the strong case of why the US-India relationship is so important. I think what we have found is that in order to face global challenges, you need global coalitions. Whether it's climate change or a pandemic, you can't go it alone. And the world does not organize itself. And this is where I think the US can once again show leadership. And if we don't, the problem is that others will, and others who perhaps have more malign intention. And so we don't want them to fill that vacuum, as we have seen happen in the last few years. And so I think there will need to be strong US leadership on these issues. I think Vice President Biden believes in having strong US leadership, but in a very different way than the current administration. I think there will be a premium on international collaboration and cooperation to address those types of global challenges. I think there will be an effort to rebuild our foreign policy foundation in the United States. And what I mean by that is our diplomatic corps and our development professionals in particular, who have been demoralized or worse, as we have seen over the last few years. So I think there'll be a strong effort to rebuild that foreign policy apparatus. And then finally, I think I want to make an economic argument. I think there will be a real attempt made to recreate economic opportunities for Americans through the normal kind of democratic, big D democratic policies of being pro-growth and pro-poor at the same time, but recognizing that it involves both domestic and foreign policy. When Vice President Biden talks about building back better and talks about, this being a way in which we can address these global challenges, but also focus on challenges at home, whether it be through infrastructure or otherwise, it's a recognition that these challenges are not just within our borders, or can't just be addressed within our borders. And so I think there's going to be a real attempt to try to connect those arguments. And I'm looking forward to that. I am really hopeful because I think the Biden-Harris ticket is one that will seek to restore American leadership. And finally, I'll just say, as much as we have seen democracy be attacked over and over through this administration, democracy is not dead. But I kid you not, it is on the ballot this November. Democracy is on the ballot. It's really important that all of us go out and vote.
Harpreet, thank you so much for that. I know that's very personally, satisfying to hear in terms of what you're saying, and certainly to our attendees this evening. But you're so right that in terms of looking out for American interests does not mean that we have to sever treaty partnerships or strategic partnerships. And there's certain things that we just can't do it alone. And as we've seen in the Obama-Biden administration, that just because we look out for our own interests doesn't mean that we just sever ties across the world, and demoralize our own leaders, in the diplomacy, foreign policy space. So so comforting to hear that that's certainly going to be top of the administration's mind, but also just in terms of partnerships and getting back on track, essentially. So thank you for that. Mushtaq, I'll turn it over to you, change course just a little bit. What do you think would be the role of the Department of Education in reaching equity in terms of education and immigration, and even in terms of securing visas?
Sure. Well, the Biden administration, or the Biden campaign, has put out a whole set of very, very exciting sort of policies related to higher education in particular, focused on access, focused on affordability. They have a very cool free community college program and platform. They're running on sort of a nice, cool apprenticeship program. They pledged to double Pell, make loans more affordable, cracking down on bad actors in the education space. But what I thought I might spend a second on is that last point about sort of foreign students. And I might highlight how different Biden and President Trump are on this question of international students. So, one of America's big strengths forever, for the last 100 years, have been our colleges and universities. They are the gold standard of the world. And when people come here from other countries to study, they stay, and they raise families here. They pay taxes, they improve our society in a myriad number of ways. And it's been a bipartisan thing for Americans to be proud of, our colleges and universities and the foreign students that we attract, until President Trump came into office. Trump has done a 180 on these issues, and he is right now trying to limit the number of international students that can study in the US. Just this week, he has proposed some new rules on H-1B visas that will serve to limit the number of international students that are able to serve in America. And analysts think that this will especially target Indians and Indian Americans. Under these new H-1B rules, Sundar Pichai may not have been able to be here and stay here. The CEO of Google. My parents wouldn't have been able to come and stay. They came in the late 60s to study at American universities at USC. My dad got a degree in mechanical engineering, but he ended up his first job was in finance, and he ended up doing things related to business and not engineering. He wouldn't have been able to stay under these new Trump guidelines. Next week, we expect rules from this administration on what we call duration of status, how long somebody can stay with a visa. And the Trump administration is trying to limit the amount of time that international students are able to stay here on a visa. Our colleges and universities are totally against this. They think it's an existential threat. Our colleges rely on international students for brain power, for sort of diversity, for the culture that they bring. I mean, foreign students have always been thought to be, extremely important. The Biden administration will be, you couldn't think of an issue in which they're going to be in more of a different place than the Trump administration on this. I think that they can change some of these proposed rules very, very quickly. We have some 200,000 Indian students currently studying in the US. Trump administration wants to bring that number down. The Biden administration would look to raise that percentage. He's always been very supportive of foreign students, families. There's a set of reforms that he's proposed to sort of streamline the green card process. But the first thing, honestly, is to change the mindset about the value of international students. You know, the Trump administration has an America first policy that, you know, really means that they are trying to keep American universities to, you know, American citizens, period. And, you know, it is not too late for us to change course on this. And a Biden administration, I think, would be in a very, very different place. And it's crucial, I think, to the strength of our colleges, to the strength of all of us, to be able to have a strong set of international students be able to study here.
No, that's very alarming, but also comforting to hear that this is not something that they can be reversed course quickly, right? And the fact that there's 200,000 Indian American, Indian foreign students here that may be suffering, you know, just every week if something else is coming out. I mean, what does this look like for them? And I'm sure all of us know at least one foreign student that we interacted with in college, and just the impact that they've had on American society, right? And America first does not mean America only at the end of the day.
Right.
You know, so thank you for that, Mushtaq.
Yeah,
And
I mean, you know, it's funny that I might have mixed up my nomenclature there about Indian American students or Indian students, but the reality is that Indian students come here and then they become Indian Americans. They
Yep.
stay, they put their roots down, and they improve themselves. They improve our, you know, America so much. And the Trump policy I just find to be extremely short-sighted in this regard.
and they progress and they contribute and they have children who then, you know, do the same, and you know, and this is how society evolves. So yeah, no, absolutely, Mushtaq. And really quickly over to you, Suhas, with respect to your experience with the technology task force that you led. What do you think would be the role of the White House Technology Task Force? And specifically, how would the administration address jobs, the economy, and helping small businesses?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, the technology task force, you know, Vice President Biden was a big part of that. And then when Trump came into office, a lot of the technology and especially the science staff got cut and hasn't really come back since. There's really been a devaluation of science in general in this administration, as we've seen through this pandemic. And, you know, I think that with Biden back in office and back in the White House, you're actually going to see real science being discussed in the White House instead of, you know, the latest conspiracy theories. You know, it's just the reality of it. And, you know, there's been a lot of talk when it comes to technology, but there hasn't actually been any action on some of the issues that are actually affecting the workforce. So, you know, the automation of jobs, globalization's impact on the economy, you know, those were things that we were seriously discussing throughout the end of the Obama administration on how we're going to tackle these important issues and critical issues. And unfortunately, you know, the work just kind of, you know, got cut short, and you know, nothing's really happened since then. So, you know, I look forward to having more scientists, more technology experts back in the White House, back in the administration, who don't have a corporate agenda like most of the folks who are in positions of power do in the Trump administration. And I look forward to actually trying to address these issues head on instead of trying to blame immigrants for all these problems, which is what's happening in this administration.
No, absolutely. It's anything, you know, anything great. Oh, it's because of me, you know, President Trump. Anything bad. Oh, well, it's the immigrants, you know. So yeah, no, it doesn't work that way. So thank you all so much for that. I really, really appreciate it. And I think that we've certainly learned a lot in terms of what you've what you've shared today. So very, very much insightful. So I think people are probably wondering, all right, what do we do? How do we make sure that everything that you've said is going to be captured? How can I help to make sure that we elect the Biden-Harris ticket? At this point, the most important thing that everybody can do really is phone banking. Well, first of all, voting, I should say. So make sure that your vote counts. And then second of all, phone bank. So you can encourage other people to vote, and also share some of the information that you've heard tonight, because some of this clears up the misinformation that I know all of us have essentially been hearing. I mean, it's important to hear that a Biden-Harris administration is only going to strengthen U.S.-India ties. It's going to, you know, revive these almost dying allyships that have, you know, relationships that have been severed. You know, we are going to make sure that, you know, like the double Pell that you're talking about, Mushtaq, you know, we're not going to be blaming immigrants. There's going to be diverse perspectives. There's going to be a slate full of capable, talented folks in the administration. So how do we do that? I'm going to actually drop in the chat ways that you guys can get involved with respect to phone bankings. We certainly have recurring phone banking opportunities, every week. So please vote. Make sure you have a plan to vote. Pick 5 people from your friends and family. Make sure that they go to the polls, whether, they go to the polls on voting day, they've dropped their ballot off, whatever it takes. And then make sure that you can call another Desi voter, right? That the impact that we found with the South Asian connection, speaking to another South Asian household, where you introduce yourself and say, hey, I'm another person, this is why I'm supporting this ticket, has been so significant. So I really encourage all of you, if all you can do in the next 2.5 weeks is even just sign up for one phone banking shift, I can assure you that is certainly going to make a difference into what truly is, and it's not cliche, but it truly is, the most significant election of our lifetime. All of this is on the ballot in November. So thank you so much for tuning in. We do have a little bit more information for you. I will drop the information about phone banking and things in the chat for you. I am going to turn it over to Sohini Sarkar to discuss some of the other councils that we also have as part of South Asians for Biden. So Sohini, I'll turn it over to you. Thank you so much.
Sure. Thank you, Neha ji. Namaste and happy Navratri to all our speakers, moderator, and attendees. My name is Sohini Sarkar, and I'm one of the co-chairs of Hindu Americans for Biden. We have had many, many wonderful events in the past few months, including events highlighting the experiences of Hindu Americans, the dharma of voting, and the importance of the Indo-Caribbean community in the upcoming election. We have also tackled issues that affect Hindu Americans as well as the entire South Asian community. These issues include preventing hate crimes, protecting mandirs and religious institutions, climate change, bullying, and how Hindu Dharma is taught in the American education system. We are participating in many phone banks and events leading up to the election, which you can learn more about by following Hindu Americans for Biden on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You can also sign up for our WhatsApp group and volunteer with us using the links that I will be posting in the chat. Remember to follow your Dharma and vote in this critical election. And with that, I'll turn it over to the Muslims for Biden's group to speak. Namaste, and once again, happy Navratri.
Do we
Is
have
Sikh Americans for Biden there? Or sorry, I think Joseph is just joining.
Hi, everyone. Good to be with you. I don't know if you can see me here. Thank you to all of the organizers and the panelists for this event. It's really wonderful to be here with you guys. I just wanted to say a couple of words for you. My name is Joseph, and I work with the campaign running the policy and outreach for the Americans Abroad portfolio. But I also work with Muslims for Biden, and we've been tremendously busy on that portfolio, reaching out to American Muslims from various communities. And clearly the Indian American community is a very significant population set within that group, and is very, very important to us. And we've been doing a number of events. I think we've done over 90, 100 events so far throughout this cycle. And on the Indian American side, we've had tremendous help from people like Asif Manvi and so many others who have been incredible with their time. So I just wanted to quickly thank all of you guys for everything that you're doing, everyone who's been active here, and also take the opportunity to, Neha, I think you're gonna throw into the chat some of our social media platforms and some information on Muslims for Biden. If any of you would like to get involved, please do reach out. We're in the final stretch. We're moving away from doing national events, and we're looking specifically at battlegrounds, and we have tons of activities happening within the battleground. So if you want to do something with Muslims for Biden in any one of the battleground states, we have tons of activities that you can get involved in, and would absolutely welcome your help. So thank you again to everybody, really appreciate it.
turn it over to Sim, perhaps, for Sikh America? Yep, there we go, Sim.
Thank you, Neha. Thank you, South Asians for Biden, for hosting this event. I'm Sim Singh. I serve as the National Director for Sikh Americans for Biden. And Sikh Americans for Biden is excited to co-sponsor this event with its inspiring lineup of speakers And if anything, today's lineup of speakers demonstrates the South Asian community can play an influential role in the highest levels of government. And with the Biden administration, we will see more of the people who look like us in government, which is really amazing. Yesterday, Sikh Americans for Biden had a panel where we had Valerie Kaur present Sikh perspectives on civic power and civil service. And we also had Mayor Ravi Bala of Hoboken share perspectives on how voting in large numbers will give our communities a seat at the table. And topics of earlier panels have addressed bullying and anti-Sikh discrimination. And over the next 17 days, Sikh Americans for Biden will be sharing more information in Punjabi to reach a broader base of the community. I would encourage everyone to ask their Sikh American friends to join us on social media or on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, WhatsApp, so that they can remain in the loop. And Sikh Americans for Biden is also phone banking every Tuesday in key swing states, calling other Sikh Americans to help turn out that vote. And with your help, we'll make Joe Biden our next president of the United States. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sim. I'll turn it over to you, Sanjeev. I don't know if there's a few questions that we want to have answered, or we have a little bit of time, but I'll turn it over to you.
Sure. Thank you, Neha. This has been such a fantastic event. We do have a little bit of time left. We have about 7 or 8 minutes, just being respectful of people's time. But and we'll get to some questions. But this has been such a fantastic event. The speakers have been so inspirational. And Neha, thank you so much for moderating. Praveen, you as well. The passion with which our speakers have served in the previous administration just comes through loud and clear. And I would encourage anyone that's part of this event today, if you are thinking of public service as a career, let this be your moment of inspiration to do it, whether it's as a political appointee, as a civil servant. This country needs talented people in public service. And I'm sure that, hopefully a Biden-Harris administration will as well. I just want to say one quick thing before I turn it over to questions. I want to thank the Indians for Biden volunteer team. You know who you are. There's too many of you to name, for putting on this fantastic event and all the lovely work you've done behind the scenes, working really hard. There's at least 7 or 8 of you led by, on a day-to-day basis, by our Deputy Director, Mansi Patel. So thank you so much for putting this event on. And with that, let me move over to the Q&A from the attendees. There's a couple of questions. I know there's people from the media on the line, and there's several attendees that have asked questions as well. Let me turn it over. I know there was a couple of questions actually regarding, in the chat box, regarding the US-India relationship. Nisha and Manpreet, Nisha, you specifically, I know you took a stab at answering that in the chat box, but you and Manpreet take a stab at sort of answering that, live for the benefit of everyone that's online?
Manpreet, why don't you I've written on the 3 foreign policy questions into the chat. I'm happy to weigh in addition, but why don't I turn to Manpreet if he wants to add anything on that?
So I think your responses in the chat are spot on, Nisha. So I won't repeat all of that for everybody, but I did want to respond to a couple of the questions that came in with respect to how do you speak with your elders or the older generation about politics, whether they seem to value fiscal conservatism over social progression, or just have some type of apathy. I think there were a couple of questions regarding that. And my advice, and I think Suhas may be better here because he probably deals with more retail politics than I do. But my advice on this is that, politics is personal. And as you're engaging family members or friends or uncles and aunties in your network, talk to them about what's important to them. If they care about healthcare, they care about politics. If they care about their son or daughter getting a good job, they care about politics. If they care about their family member wanting to come and be a student at a university in the United States, they care about politics, as Mushtaq talked about earlier. And so my advice is make it personal for those folks. Bring it home. Whatever talking points any type of campaign can give will never be as compelling as the kinds of conversations, the kinds of personal conversations you can have with the people that are in your life. Bring it home to them in a way that resonates with them. Because all too often, what otherwise happens is we just end up regurgitating these very generic talking points that people get turned off by. And so that would be my advice and my response to those couple of questions.
Thank you, Manpreet. Nisha, I know Manpreet referenced Suhas as well, but anything that you want to chime in on that? Sorry, okay, yeah.
Yeah, no, I think Manpreet answered it. And I think, now is an important time to have conversations that say that, first and foremost, this election is about the future of America. It's about our place in that future. We as immigrants who have made this country our home, who have invested so much into contributing to this society and have made this the home for our children, our grandchildren. What kind of an America and what kind of a future do we look to? And I think that is fundamentally on the ballot in this election. US-India ties are going to thrive and be absolutely fine. India is a rising power, and that power will have a strong relationship with the United States in a Joe Biden administration or whatever future administration, because India is a consequential power and a power that for America is more closely aligned with our views and our values and the world that we want to see. But what we cannot take for granted is that America itself will continue to be the country that espouses those values that drew us here in the first place. And so that is the conversation that I think is critically important for every American to have, and particularly for every immigrant American to be having with their family members, with their friends. What is at stake in this election?
Thanks, Manpreet. Thanks, Nisha. I want to turn it over now to Suhas and Mushtaq, and just a couple of things in the 2 or 3 minutes we have left. You're obviously more than welcome to add on or respond to anything that Nisha and Manpreet might have said. But I do want to specifically address from the Q&A box one question to both of you, which is a little bit more on the domestic side of things. Can you comment about what a Biden-Harris administration would do in terms of the social safety net, in terms of social mobility and those kinds of areas? I know, obviously, Mushtaq, in your case, education is an issue near and dear to your heart. And Suhas, you've served on, in various different capacities, not just as an elected official now, but previously in the technology space. And these are both areas that are vital to social mobility, social progress. So if you want to comment on that, please.
Suhas, you want to go first?
Sure, yeah. No, I'll just say two things. One, as far as the social safety net, when I hear that phrase, I think about Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. The Trump administration and some of the Republican Party in Congress, and certainly, my colleagues at the state level, they want to cut those programs. I mean, they want to privatize them. They think that they're handouts in certain ways. The problem is the political realities are those are very popular programs, but the ideology suggests that they want to cut them. And so if you're worried about those programs, you have to vote for Vice President Biden. I think it's very simple. And Vice President Biden has a 40-year history of protecting those programs. If it weren't for him, for other congressional Democrats he served with, those programs would not be as strong as they are today. As it is, they've been weakened over the years. And because of the priorities of this administration, those programs have been weakened for the foreseeable future. So the other thing I'll say is that when it comes to voting and when it comes to really this election, if you're someone who hasn't voted much in the past or maybe is turned off a little bit by politics, there's going to be a lot of negativity out there on social media, especially on TV. And I would not allow those things to prevent you or dissuade you from getting out to the ballot box or to sending in your ballot this year. Please don't, because all the negativity that's out there, there's a lot of positive reasons why you should be coming out voting for Vice President Biden. We've talked a lot about them on this call. And the reason there's a lot of negativity coming your way is because there's a lot of people, especially in the Trump campaign, that do not want you to vote. Because if you vote, you're probably not going to vote. You're going to vote in your best interests, most likely. That's probably not for them. So what happened in 2016 was a lot of people sat it out because they saw a lot of negativity, and what they saw was there wasn't a very good choice, and so they sat it out. Or maybe they were just frustrated with both candidates and they voted for someone they thought was an outsider. And so that's the negativity that you see, and some of the misinformation, things like Vice President Biden's going to cut Medicare and Social Security and harm those programs, which is completely not true. That's because it's a strategy. It's a campaign strategy by the Trump administration and the Trump campaign to get you to not vote or to make the wrong decision in this case. So please do not let the negativity and the misinformation prevent you from going out to the ballot box and voting for Vice President Biden this November.
And when I think about let me say two things too, and I'll be quick. When I think of the social safety net, we think about Social Security and Medicare, Medicaid, and we should, vitally important. And Democrats have a long history, and Vice President Biden in particular has a long history of protecting those programs. But I also think about education as a social safety net issue. Our students, the vast majority of our students go to public schools, and will go to public schools or private schools for higher ed, but for K-12 are in public schools. And the difference between sort of where the Trump administration is and where the Biden administration is on K-12 education, the amount of dollars that Vice President Biden and Senator Harris have proposed putting into our public schools to strengthen those schools is, it is night and day. So when I think a little bit about how to convince, neighbors, folks that are a little bit disinterested in politics, into voting, is to focus them on education. You ask people what they care about, they will tell you they care about education. Unfortunately, education doesn't come up at the debates, they're not in ads. But the difference on this very core issue for our community, really couldn't be more clear. Other issues, complicated. Education, not complicated. Vice President Biden and Senator Harris care about this, very deeply. Vice President Biden's wife, Dr. Jill Biden, is a teacher herself. We worked very closely with her and her staff when I was in the Obama administration. So to the extent that you're thinking about how to convince people, I think going back to basics, the social safety net questions are really important. And education, I think, is one of those social safety net issues.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Mushtaq, Nisha, Suhas, Manpreet, and Neha and Praveen for moderating this as well. This has been such a wonderful program. It really warms my heart to be part of this program with such inspirational people. One thing I will say is I'm going to echo what Neha said a short while ago. Get involved, phone bank. The most important thing is that we have a Biden-Harris administration on or shortly after the 3rd of November. And with your help, we are going to get that done. So get involved, phone bank, and we'll make this work together. Also on the chat, I did receive a lot of questions, and in the Q&A box, how do I get involved with Sikhs for Biden, Muslims for Biden, Indians, South Asians, Hindus for Biden, etc. Feel free to email me. My email is sanjeev.joshipura. You'll see my name on the screen there under my picture, sanjeev.joshipura@gmail.com. Email me and I'll make sure that as the National Director of the Indians for Biden volunteer group, that your query is directed to the appropriate person. We love your involvement, love your passion. Thank you all so much for attending. Thank you for your time. Thanks to the panelists and the moderators, and have a nice evening.
Thank you.
Thanks all.